Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. I said at the beginning of this year I felt in 2021 micro brands were going to have to try even harder than ever for our attention and our cash money. I wanted to see more colour, better designs, more originality, and just stuff that I hadn't seen before. Those thinly disguised Rolex Submariner homages from a few years ago simply weren't going to cut it anymore, and I feel on balance I've been really impressed with some of the micros that I've reviewed so far this year, including a few that have looked like nothing I had seen up until this point. And I think this Axios Pathfinder fits into that category. I would describe it as a dressy vintage retro field watch. I'm not sure I've ever used those words in the same sentence before, but there you go. I got sent two prototypes for review. Admittedly, I got sent the gold and the salmon pink ones, which are at the dressier end of their colour spectrum. However, certain decisions have been taken over the course of the design of this watch that push it towards the dressy end of the field watch spectrum, as will be discussed. This one launches on Kickstarter in 2 days' time. I will leave links in the description of the video to both their website and the Kickstarter campaign. Now, the thumbnail price, $249, is the early bird price, so as always, if you're keen on this one, get in early. You saw the pop-up, I'm sure. This video is sponsored by Axios. These are protos, but I'll be sent one in the colour of my choosing in due course. Now, if the name sounds familiar, it should. I've looked at their two previous models, the flagship and the ironclad. They are not a sister brand, not a sub-brand, maybe a side project would be a better term to use, of the Zelos owner El Shantang. Kickstarter, I guess, always carries risk. A good way of mitigating the risk is by choosing a watch from a brand that already has two projects and a well-known owner. Let's flip the camera and have a look at them. So what does a dressy vintage retro field watch look like then? Well, I reckon that's what it looks like. Like I said, I got sent the gold one and the salmon pink one. I got the gold on the bracelet and I got the salmon pink just as is the head of the watch. So I put it on this colour complementary grey NATO strap. There are some more sedate, if not particularly militaristic colours available. There's a white, there's a grey and there's a black. So you don't have to go full dressy. But some of the details are decidedly more dressy than a lot of the other field watches that I have looked at to date. That is for sure. They all come with this little Axios branded pouch. So I think it's fairly obvious, it's fairly straightforward what Axios have done here. They've taken the classic 1940s Dirty Dozen style military field watch and they have both dressed it up and modernised it. So signature Arabics 1 to 12 applied. There's the train track around the outer edge, which all the Dirty Dozen watches had as well. Applied markers at the 5 minutes. There's even the triple marker at 12 and the single slightly different marker at 6. Where it gets dressy though is when you look at some of the case finishing. I'll show you that in just a second. Classic dimensions though, 40-20, so 40mm in diameter, 20mm lug width, bang on 12mm thick. Now that is not bad considering it is Seiko NH powered, no surprises there, and we have a super compact 46.5 lug to lug. But there's a bit of chunk to this one. 20mm lug width, tapers down to 18, back up to 21 at the clasp. Weight, 143 grams, so proper dive watch weight here. Like I said, there's a bit of chunk to it, 200 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown, meaning plenty of versatility here. Field watches, you'll often get a lot less than that, sometimes even 50 meters of water resistance, no screw down crowns on certain Hamiltons, so it is nice to see the security that comes with a decent level of water resistance and a screw down crown from this one. I think the case finishing is excellent for a $250 watch. It is also rather intricate for a field watch. So super fine, really lovely fine brushing on that mid case. Same on the upper lug surfaces. There is a circular brush on the top surface of the bezel. There is a high polished chamfered edge though running all the way around the case. Now I do mean all the way around the case. There's a kind of undercut to the bottom here as well. Axios branded crown, unguarded of course, and a rather complex bezel. 4 different surfaces to that bezel. Brushed upper surface, there's a diagonal high polish, there is a vertical brush finish, and if I show you at an angle, there is another little high polished undercut. So again, very, very nice, slightly more detailed, slightly more intricate than you would normally expect from this style of watch for sure. As is the bracelet. Now that is a proper 5-link bracelet. Those are all individual pieces of metal machined separately. Mostly brushed upper surface, however the 3 middle links have chamfered edges with high polish. So again, it is a little dressier than one might normally be used to. The clasp. This is my favourite clasp to see on a micro brand, though normally you get it on divers. I think that's one of the reasons why this watch weighs in at 143 grams. It's because it has got a fairly sizable clasp on it. I love it though. Chamfered edge, security fold over, double triggers, 6 micro adjust hole, properly milled, $250 watch. That is a great clasp on a watch at this price. And the case back is also very pleasant for the money. Stainless steel screw on, 200 meters as mentioned, and that is a lovely high polished embossed Pegasus set against a kind of dappled mottled background. Axios Pathfinder automatic, Seiko NH35, and how can man die better? I'll come back to that. And 000, these are prototypes, I'm guessing therefore that each of the individual colorways will be individually numbered on production units. The good old Seiko NH35. Perhaps not the most interesting or exciting movement in the world, but when you produce a set of numbers like that from a budget automatic, that's the reason why they are so prevalent. They are everywhere with good reason. They are pretty awesome, really. But let's have a look at some macro and let's have a look at the dial and the hands. Some watches I take them outside and yeah, it doesn't really make a difference to how they appear. Some watches I take them outside and they really pop. Perhaps it is the colours, perhaps it's the gold, perhaps it is the salmon pink, but those two look sensational I think outside. I had the salmon pink one on a bit of distressed vintage leather as well, just to complement the colour tones on the dial. So applied Arabics all the way round, slightly different colours though on each of the two watches. The gold one features silver surrounds and silver hands. The salmon pink one features gunmetal surrounds and gunmetal hands. Fairly subtle Axios logo. I'm having a guess that the same person designed the Axios logo as designed the Ergon logo, and just the word Pathfinder and 200 meters / 660 feet above the 6. Now the center sections of both of those dials are also textured. I wouldn't necessarily call it Fortina. I don't think they're trying to make the watches look older than they actually are. They're just adding another interesting textural element. I've already mentioned the train tracks on a raised section around the outer edges with those little circular and rectangular markers. Nice handset, segmented sword hands with a bevel edge down the middle as well, and it's a very simple needle second hand. And there's actually still a fair amount of depth to the dial considering the watch is only 12mm thick. And there's a reasonable amount of lume on the hands and the indexes as well. C3 Superluminova X1 grade. I reckon the production units are going to be at least as good as these prototypes, if not better. On wrist, this gold one is definitely quite dressy because of the colour and because of all those high polished surfaces that I've been talking about earlier on, but it's also got a kind of chunky, purposeful feel to it. Don't forget 143 grams, which is quite hefty for this size of watch. Great proportions though, 40-20 as mentioned, sits nice and flat on wrist, no protrusion from the case back. I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference. 46.5mm lug to lug, this one is going to be no problem at all for 8 inches, I reckon, down to about 5 3/4, 6-inch wrists. Overhead shot with the pink dial. Legibility certainly better with these gunmetal hands than they were with the silver hands on the gold dial. As you push towards that kind of dressy end of things, legibility does suffer. So again, have a think if you're keen on one of these about how important that is to you. Outside natural light, it's a piece of flat sapphire with anti-reflective undercoating, but there's a lot going on in terms of high polished surfaces on the dial with the surrounds to each of those Arabics, plus the little markers, plus the shiny handset. So again, do beware, you're going to get a bit of flecto even with that anti-reflective undercoating. Same applies if I cut to the pocket shot. Because the sapphire is dead flat, you do get that bounce back from certain angles. On wrist, it does wear very nicely though. That 5-link bracelet certainly helps. Nice articulation there. Helps fit the wrist very comfortably. Moans and niggles, well, it can't all be sweetness and light, can it? It's a Kickstarter project, so there is the inevitable delayed gratification. You cannot buy this one and get it shipped to you same day. You're going to be waiting a couple of months for the production run. Only 1 year warranty as well. I complain about it every time I come across it. I think 2 years really should be the industry standard minimum. And then there's that obscure quote on the case back, and how can man die better? It's actually a quote from a narrative poem from 1842 by Thomas Macaulay, or at least that's what Wikipedia told me. The full quote is, "And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?" So it's kind of dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. but in the Horace sense rather than the Wilfred Owen sense, if you see what I mean. I'm always a little bit uncomfortable when brand new microbrands start slapping historical quotes on the back of their watches or naming their models after military vessels or famous battles. It all just makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, and I think it is a bit unnecessary, and I've accused Axios of doing this before. They haven't over-branded the front of the watch. I think the front of the watch looks great this time. It's called a Pathfinder, that's a fairly neutral name, but they've stuck that and a Pegasus on the back. It just seems like they couldn't help themselves. They felt they had to do something, when in reality I would have been happier if they just done nothing. But anyway, that's just me. I study history. I'm well aware that most people will probably not give a toss about what it says on the caseback. My only other complaint regards the price. Now, I'm not complaining about the price. I think $250 for a watch of this quality. Very nicely put together, no shakes, no rattles, screw link bracelet, multi-link bracelet, nicely finished, etc, 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 is a good deal. That's the early bird special though. If you missed the early bird special, it goes to $379, which is 10% more, which is still okay. If you're watching this video in 6 months or a year's time and this one is on the full RRP of $339, that is a bit of a different ball game, isn't it? Once you're in the mid threes, you're getting perilously close to a grey market Hamilton Khaki King. This watch may well be better manufactured than a Khaki King, but it does not have anything like the brand identity or the brand reputation or the fantastic Swiss movement that you get in the back of a Hamilton. So as always, if you're keen, get in early. So there you have it. If you have been hunting high and low for the perfect dressy vintage retro field watch, then the Axios Pathfinder might be just what you've been looking for. You see what I mean though? All those high polished chamfered edges to the case itself, the high polished mid links in the bracelet, definitely towards the dressy end of the field watch spectrum. I don't think I've seen a dressier field watch than this one, especially in salmon pink and bright gold anyway. $250 US though, nicely wearable, well proportioned, well dimensioned, and a fairly chunky feeling little thing. Obviously, if you're keen, get in early, because $279 and then the RRP of $339, not nearly as appealing. Thanks for watching. I will see you all in a future video.